Hi, this is Thomas Moeller doing my audio visual response 2. The subject this week is chapter 6 through 8 of Richard Bauckham's Jesus and the God of Israel. Excuse me. Chapter 6, the main topic was Paul's distinct Christology that we find within his epistles. To start the chapter, Bauckham gives a brief summary and overview of the ties between early Jewish monotheism and early Christianity. Much of this is what he's already gone over throughout the entirety of the book, such as he restated the importance of divine identity and the difference between it and divine nature, and how the Israelites cared more about who God is and not what divinity is. Bauckham then provided a list of passages that use the term Yahweh to refer to Christ within the New Testament as sort of his evidence, his data. Bauckham then spends a large amount of time, really the majority of time of chapter 6, discussing three main passages in which Paul interprets Jewish monotheism through a Christological lens. That is, there are passages that include Jesus into the divine identity. He discusses Romans 10:13, Philippians 2:6-11, which is famously the one hymn about Christ coming down, and 1 Corinthians 8:5-6. He then ends chapter 6 with a discussion of potential intermediary figures that could have prefigured Christ in Jewish monotheism, such as Melchizedek. But Bauckham concludes that Jesus' inclusion into the divine identity and taking Yahweh's name cannot be attributed to a previous use of intermediary figures in Jewish monotheism. Chapter 7 is about the divinity of Christ, as found in the book of Hebrews. Though Bauckham does touch on the humanity of Christ a couple of times in the chapter, his main focus is on Christ's divinity. Bauckham basically argues that Hebrews gives three main roles to Christ, that being the Son, Lord, and the High Priest. He argues that all of these require Christ to be divine. He first breaks down the role of the Son and its ties to divinity, basically arguing that the Son has to be divine because he inherits the name of the Father, that is, the divine name Yahweh. And then for being Lord, it is noted that Jesus is worshipped by the angels and all of creation. This, he would have to be divine to be worshipped by all of creation, because that is worship that is traditionally given only to Yahweh, because Yahweh is the creator. So for Christ to be worshipped by creation would then imply that he is the creator as well. And then for the high priest, the divine aspect would be that Christ's atonement is eternal and permanent, something no mortal priest could do the same. Only the eternal God could do that. Chapter 8 is mainly about the use of Psalm 22:1 and Jesus' final cry on the cross found in Matthew. Bauckham discusses what is meant by the cry and whether the whole psalm is a mind here by the author. Bauckham in part takes it as Jesus taking part of all the suffering of those who use that psalm, but he mostly argues that this is evidence of Jesus being abandoned by God. And he argues that to be abandoned or forsaken by God is to be left to suffer and die, like the psalmist. And so then he points that Jesus did suffer and die, meaning that Jesus was forsaken. And on the question as to what I think about whether Jesus was abandoned, I would agree with Bauckham if we are to take forsaken and abandoned by his definition. If the definition of being abandoned or forsaken by God is that he was left to suffer and die, then yes, Christ was abandoned. Even though later on, 3 days later, he was resurrected.